I always hated St. Augustine High. Not in the normal way kids hate school. The tests, the homework, the teachers who seemed to drain the life out of you one lecture at a time. No, my hatred ran deeper. There was something wrong with the place. Something hidden behind the peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. You could feel it in the walls. Most people ignored it. They shrugged off the whispers in the empty hallways, the cold spots near the old lockers. They blamed the weird disappearances, 2 last year, 1 the year before, on kids running away or getting into trouble. But I knew better, because I had seen it. It happened last winter, late in the evening. I had stayed after school for detention, thanks to a failed chemistry test and a teacher who had it out for me. By the time I left, the halls were dark, the only sound my sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. Then I heard it, a soft shuffle, a breath. I turned, expecting to see a janitor. Instead, at the far end of the hallway, standing just outside room 217, was a figure. A girl, maybe 15 or 16, her head tilted, her eyes dark hollows in her pale face. She shouldn't have been there. And then she moved. Not walked, moved. One moment she was near the door. The next she was closer, and closer still. I ran. I didn't stop until I burst through the front doors and into the freezing night. I told myself it was a trick of the light, that I was tired seeing things. But deep down I knew the truth. St. Augustine High had its ghosts, and some of them were still hungry. The next day, I went to the library. Not because I wanted to do research or anything, I just needed somewhere quiet, somewhere away from the crowds. The librarian, Mrs. Holloway, gave me a nod as I walked in. She was ancient, her hair a cloud of white, her hands covered in age spots. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. I swallowed. "Just tired." She smiled, but there was something knowing in her eyes. I wandered between the shelves, running my fingers over the spines of old books. Eventually, I found myself in the history section. St. Augustine High had been around forever, longer than the town itself, some said. It had been rebuilt 3 times, once after a fire, once after a flood. But the original building... I found an old yearbook on a dusty shelf, the pages yellowed and brittle. Flipping through, I saw black and white photos of students from decades past, their eyes staring back, frozen in time. Then I saw her, the girl from the hallway. The caption read, "Rebecca Lane, 1963. A chill ran through me. I turned the page, my heart hammering. There, in the back of the book, was a list of students who had died while attending St. Augustine High. Rebecca Lane's name was there, and next to it, in faded type, "Missing, presumed dead." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Those hollow eyes. By morning, I had made a decision. I had to go back to room 217. After school, I waited until the halls emptied. The janitors would be around soon, but I had time. Moving quickly, I walked to the 2nd floor. Room 217 was at the end of the hallway, just like before. But something was different. The door was open. I stepped inside. The room smelled like old paper and dust. Desks stood in neat rows, untouched. The chalkboard was covered in faint white smudges, as if words had been written and erased over and over. And then I saw it. At the back of the room, where a supply closet should have been, there was another door. A door I had never seen before. It was old, its wood blackened with age. And from the other side, something scratched. Slowly, methodically, like it was waiting. I should have left. I should have run. But something held me there. I reached out, my fingers brushing the rough wood. The scratching stopped. Then, bang! The door shuddered, as if something huge had thrown itself against it. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. And then the door opened. Darkness. Not normal darkness, but something deeper. A void. A nothingness that watched. And from that blackness, something moved. A hand, too long, too pale, curled around the edge of the doorframe. Fingers with nails like claws. Then another hand. Then a face. Not Rebecca. Not anymore. Its skin was stretched too tight, its eyes wide and empty, its mouth an open wound. And it was smiling. I turned and ran. But the hallway was longer now. Stretched. Warped. The walls pulsed. The lockers rattled. And behind me, the thing that had once been Rebecca laughed. I don't know how I made it out. One moment, I was trapped. The next, I was outside, gasping for air, the school dark behind me. The next day, room 217 was gone. Not just locked, gone. No door. No desks. No record that it had ever existed. I tried to ask Mrs. Holloway, but she only shook her head. "Some doors," she said, "should never be opened. I never went back to St. Augustine High, and I never saw Rebecca Lane again. But sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear the scratching and the laughter, because some doors never really close, and some ghosts never really leave. Westlake High School had always been old, but it wasn't until the renovations began that people started noticing the oddities. The construction workers found strange carvings beneath the floorboards, names scratched deep into the wood, dates ranging back to the early 1900s. Some were crossed out. Others simply faded into nothing. Room 104 was the worst. Ms. Grayson, a young English teacher new to the school, had been assigned the room. On her first day, she noticed the students seemed reluctant to enter. Their desks were pushed too far away from the walls, as if they feared being too close to them. "Why is everything so far from the walls?" she asked, setting her books down. No one answered. A few students exchanged nervous glances. That was the first time she heard it. A whisper. It wasn't loud, just a faint breath against the back of her neck. Ms. Grayson turned quickly, expecting to see a student standing behind her, but there was nothing, just the blackboard, smeared faintly with leftover chalk. She cleared her throat. "All right, let's begin." The students worked quietly. Too quietly. The air in room 104 felt thick, like the atmosphere just before a storm. Then the scratching started. At first, she thought it was a student absent-mindedly scribbling on a desk. But then she saw it. Right before her eyes, one of the desks in the back of the room trembled. A deep, slow scratch carved itself into the wood. Her breath caught. No one else seemed to notice. She forced herself to look away. Over the next few weeks, the whispers continued. They always came from the back of the room. Always when no one was standing there. Ms. Grayson started staying late after school, determined to figure out what was happening. One evening, she brought a flashlight and an old yearbook she'd found in the library archives. She flipped through the pages, searching for any mention of room 104. The photographs were black and white, faded with time. Then she saw it. A class photo from 1932. The students sat at their desks, their hands neatly folded. Their teacher, a stern woman with hollow eyes, stood behind them. But in the far right corner, barely visible, was something else. A shadow. It didn't match the lighting in the rest of the photo. It was just there, watching. A loud thump made her jump. The closet door at the back of the room had swung open. Ms. Grayson swallowed hard and stood up. She had tried opening that closet before. It was always locked. Now the door hung slightly ajar, revealing darkness inside. She took a step closer, then another. The air was freezing near the closet. She hesitated before reaching out, and something inside breathed. She stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The closet door slammed shut. She didn't go near it again. The next morning, she checked the yearbook again. Most of the students from the 1932 class had their names listed beneath the photo, but 3 of them didn't. Their faces were blurred, as if the ink had been smudged. At lunchtime, she asked the librarian about it. "That class?" The librarian frowned. "That was the year of the fire." "Fire?" "It started in room 104. They said a student named Robert Caldwell went missing that day. They never found his body." Ms. Grayson's stomach twisted. "And the other 2? The librarian hesitated. "Some say they disappeared too. No one really knows." That night, she dreamed of whispering voices. They were calling a name. Robert. The next morning, Ms. Grayson called in sick. She needed time to process what she'd learned. A substitute teacher, Mr. Holloway, took over for the day. By noon, he was gone. The principal found him in the hallway, shaking. He refused to go back inside room 104. When asked what happened, all he would say was, "The boy. He was sitting in the back. But when I called his name, he just disappeared." There was no student in the class roster by that name. Ms. Grayson returned the next day, determined to end whatever was happening. She stayed late again, waiting. The whispers began as usual, but this time, she didn't turn away. Instead, she spoke. "I know you're here." The air shifted. The whispering stopped. "I know what happened to you." Silence. Then the closet door creaked open. Inside, faintly glowing, were names, scratched into the wood, one over the other. She recognized some from the yearbook, and at the very bottom, a new one was being carved. Charlotte Grayson. Her own name. Something cold wrapped around her wrist. And then the lights flickered out. The next morning, the janitor found room 104 empty. The closet door was wide open. Inside, beneath the scratched names, was a fresh one. No one ever found Ms. Grayson. But sometimes, if you stand very still in the back of room 104, you can hear her whispering, calling for help. But it's too late. She's part of the school now,